Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jacob Firsel. I'm a tour guide here in Israel, and today we're in Tel Aviv. Busy Tel Aviv with tall buildings, but Tel Aviv has its secrets, and one of its best kept secrets is the American colony. Now, we're going to go into a time machine and go back to the year 1866, right after the American Civil War, when a con artist slash flim-flam man called Adams convinces 156 people from Maine to sell all their possessions, buy prefabricated homes, and make the Holy Land ready for the Second Coming. By that, they wanted to teach the Jews who would come to the land of Israel farming so they could reclaim the land. Now, you might say he was ahead of his time, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. So when you're in Tel Aviv, the very, very southern part of Tel Aviv, and Jaffa is just right down there where most tour buses go, about a 15-minute walk, and you come and see this. And you see these beautiful old homes. And these are the homes that these Americans built when they got here in the summer of 1866. Now, they came from Maine on a ship called the Nellie Chapin, and they landed in Jaffa. But here's the thing, the Turks, who were then running the Holy Land was, the land of Israel, was a sort of the biggest backwater in the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire. They didn't want Americans to come here. So they let them rot on the beach next to a cemetery that was full of cholera victims. Needless to say, it wasn't so salubrious for the people. And finally, the American Council was able to buy land from them all the way over here. Now, this is right now, we're in the heart of Jaffa, in a very, very built-up part of Tel Aviv. But back then, in 1866, there was nothing here, except for sand and a few lizards. So, as we see this home here, this is now the modern Drisco Hotel. It was the home of the Drisco brothers, two of these Americans who came here, and then it was turned into the Hotel Jerusalem. And it was at the time the fanciest hotel in Jaffa. Remember, Tel Aviv didn't come into being until 1909. So we have this beautiful house next door, and that is one of these houses. We have the Drisco Brothers Hotel. And as we walk down the street, well, if you look up here, you'll see there's German written over the door. Now, why there's German here, I'll tell you in a minute. Let's keep on walking. So, this fella named George Adams, he was originally, I believe, from Pennsylvania, and he joined the Mormon movement in the 1840s. Now, the Mormons were always interested in the restoration, meaning bringing Jews to the land of Israel, reclaiming the land for the second coming of Christ. Now, Adams was thrown out of the Mormon church because, number one, he was an alcoholic. Okay? So he didn't do that well with the Mormons. And then he went east. Now, he wasn't always a pastor, he was a failed actor. And being an alcoholic and being a womanizer, he would forget his lines and not show up to plays. So very quickly, he lost his living as an actor, but found a great living as an evangelical preacher. So he went to Maine, started a church, and convinced these families to live everything they had. They sold their land, they sold their farms, and they came here. in 1867. Now, they didn't have such a good time here because the land just wasn't good for farming. And very quickly, they started starving to death. Now, they built their homes, as you can see, and interesting home here I want to talk about. And this home was restored in the 1980s by a fellow named Reed Holmes. And he is from Maine, and this is actually one of his relatives' ancestors' home right here. So here is this beautifully restored wooden home, and next to it we see a Lutheran church. Now, this home was restored, and what happened was that the people started dying of cholera, of dysentery, and they were having a really tough time. You just get in the sun here a little bit so you can see me. So they're having a really tough time. So as it turns out, they were at wit's end. They wrote a letter to a big newspaper, I believe in Boston, and they started a fund to rescue these people. By a year's end, 60 of them have died of disease, about half of those children. So the colony was a complete failure, but one person stayed, and his name was Rollo Floyd. And I have a special connection with Rollo Floyd because Rollo Floyd is the grandfather of all Israeli tour guides. So we'll get to his home in a minute. But I'd like to talk about this building here. Now, this is a hotel called Beit Emmanuel, and it is a Protestant sort of hostel for like a two-star hotel, and it is run by the Jews for Jesus here in Israel. Okay, they call themselves Messianic Jews, but the minute you convert to Christianity, you're no longer a Jew. Okay, so they're people with some sort of Jewish background, and they have taken over this hotel. But the hotel is interesting because when you walk into the garden they have here, and the newer part of the Drisco Hotel here, you see here. So there's a really nice 5-star boutique hotel here, and a not so nice little 2-star little place here. But you go into the garden, and it's got an interesting name. It should be a sign that says Platons Garden, because who started this garden, or what's left of this garden? You see these beautiful ficus trees, these Bengali ficus trees. Who started this was someone's name called Platon Ustinov. And Platon Ustinov, if the name sounds familiar, he was the granddaddy of the actor Peter Ustinov. So Peter Ustinov was descended from this Russian and then later German sort of count. You know, his title was always, I think, a little bit in doubt, but he called himself a count. And he built that hotel there. So that's what we have here. And today it's just a beautiful little spot here. But what you see, and it's really hard to imagine this, but you see what's left of these homes. Now, the church here, I'm not going to bother go in. It's 1905, and it doesn't have to do with anything about the Americans here. But these homes do. And there are 2 homes here that I want to point out. This one is being restored, but it is, you can see, being covered and not kept its original form. These were wooden, and then they were, the wood rotted, and you can see that they were rebuilt, they were plastered up. But Rollo Floyd, like I said, the granddaddy of tourists, here he is, and you can see the year this home was built, 1866. Okay, so this little place here, this little American colony, of course, is being gentrified, right? Like all rundown neighborhoods. Tel Aviv, by the way, Tel Aviv is now the world's most expensive city to live in the world. I mean, Israel's expensive anyway, but to live in Tel Aviv, the prices here, more than Paris, more than Manhattan, more than St. Petersburg, you name it, we beat them. But what happened is that the developers got in, and you can see what they built here. They just tore everything down, put in a modern infrastructure, and built what you folks would call condos. Yeah? And you can see it is quiet, it's lovely. Here's somebody with a little Malinois dog. And this is about as loud as it gets here. So what we're going to do is just walk down this lovely little lane here. And you can see it's built up. And the most important thing for these people who live here, you're in the center of a very important part of Tel Aviv. And here's a tour group coming through with a tour guide. How you doing? And it looks like a Taglit group. Yeah. And I don't know where they're from. I guess it's either Russia or the Ukraine. The most important thing for these people is this underground parking. And parking spaces in Tel Aviv are, you really, really have to have one. So we've finished our tour. That's it. It's a very, very small area. And then we see the rebuilding, the gentrification of these old Bauhaus style buildings in Tel Aviv. And like I said, remember Tel Aviv-Jaffa is a part of Tel Aviv. It was incorporated in Tel Aviv in 1948. And folks, I hope you enjoyed our little tour. That's all I have to say. My name is Jacob Firsel, and it would be my pleasure to take you for a tour here. Of course, those who know me know that right now, what time is it? Coffee time. So till then, stay safe, take care, God bless. Bye now.